You walk into the woods. The trees are still. A bird stops singing. You step on a dry branch. A deer bolts into the brush. Why did it run? You assume it is because you are large. You assume it is because you are loud. You assume you simply startled a nervous creature that reacts to any sudden movement in the forest. But you are wrong. The deer did not run because you are large or loud. It ran because of your shape. It ran because of the way you stand on two legs. It ran because of the specific cadence of your bipedal footsteps. For over 300,000 years, your ancestors have been the most terrifying force on this planet. And the animal kingdom has not forgotten. For 99% of human history, you were not just another animal in the ecosystem. You were the apex. You were the anomaly. You were the nightmare that stalked the savannas and the forests. What if wild animals pass down horror stories about you? What if the fear of the human shape is not just a passing instinct, but a deep ancestral memory burned into the DNA and social networks of the natural world? To understand this, you have to strip away your modern perception of yourself. You look in the mirror today and see a person. You see someone who worries about paying bills, answering emails, and deciding what to eat for dinner. You do not see a monster. You do not see a ruthless, hyper-lethal predator. But the natural world does not care about your emails. The natural world only cares about survival. And in the brutal mathematics of survival, your species represents the ultimate variable. Let us look at the ecology of fear. This is a scientific concept that describes how the mere presence of a predator changes the behavior of prey. It is not just about the killing, it is about the dread. The constant, looming threat of death alters where animals eat, where they sleep, and how many offspring they have. For a long time, scientists thought that lions, wolves, and bears were the primary drivers of this fear landscape. But you are far more terrifying than a lion. In a groundbreaking study conducted in the Greater Kruger National Park in South Africa, ecologist Dr. Liana Zanet set out to measure this exact phenomenon. The park is home to the most formidable predators on Earth: lions, leopards, hyenas, wild dogs. The researchers placed hidden speakers near waterholes, places where animals must go to drink, making them highly vulnerable. They played various sounds to see what would trigger the most intense panic. They played the roars of lions. They played the sounds of hunting dogs. They played the sound of human voices, speaking calmly, not shouting, not shooting guns, just humans, talking in normal conversational tones. The results were absolute and chilling. When the animals heard lions, they were alert. Some moved away, some hesitated. But when they heard the calm voices of humans, the savanna erupted in sheer panic. Rhinos, elephants, giraffes, leopards, and warthogs abandoned the waterholes immediately. They sprinted away in terror. The study revealed that wildlife in the park is twice as likely to flee and abandons waterholes 40% faster when hearing humans compared to hearing lions. You are the apex of the apex. The sound of your voice is the most terrifying sound on the African continent. But how do they know? How does an elephant or a leopard know that the sound of a hairless biped speaking is a death sentence? Some of it is learned through direct experience. If an animal survives an encounter with a poacher or a hunter, it learns. But what about the animals that have never seen you hunt? What about the generations of prey that simply know to avoid the two-legged shadow? This brings you to the strange and unsettling reality of cultural transmission in animals. Animals talk to each other. They share information, they warn each other about threats, and they tell stories. They do not use campfires or written language, but they pass down vital survival data across generations. Consider the remarkable research of Dr. John Mard-Slough at the University of Washington. He wanted to know how crows perceive human faces and whether they hold grudges. Researchers walked around the university campus wearing a specific, somewhat frightening rubber mask. They called it the caveman mask. While wearing this mask, they trapped and banded a few crows. They did not harm the birds, but the experience was highly stressful. After banding them, the researchers released the crows. What happened next fundamentally changed how we understand animal memory. For years afterward, Anyone wearing that specific caveman mask on campus was violently mobbed by crows. The birds would dive bomb the person, scolding and shrieking. But here is the terrifying twist. It was not just the original crows who were trapped that attacked the mask. Crows that had never been trapped joined in. Soon, the offspring of the original crows were attacking the mask. Entire flocks of crows that had not even been born when the original trapping occurred were passing down the exact facial features of the enemy. The crows had essentially created a mythological monster. They passed down a horror story about a specific human face. Even a decade later, the mask elicited furious, coordinated attacks from birds that had only ever heard the stories from their elders. If a crow can pass down the exact description of a single human face for over a decade, what do you think the rest of the animal kingdom has been passing down for 300 millennia? Let us reconstruct a day in the deep past to see how this trauma was originally forged. Imagine you are standing in the middle of Pleistocene Europe, roughly 300,000 years ago. The air is cold. The landscape is a sprawling steppe dominated by massive beasts. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, cave bears, giant ground sloths. These are the megafauna. They are enormous, armored in thick fur and muscle, and they fear absolutely nothing. Why should they? They are the undisputed lords of the ice. Then, you arrive. Your ancestors, early humans and Neanderthals, step into this landscape. To a giant ground sloth or a cave bear, you look pathetic. You are small. You have no claws. You have no thick hide. You do not run particularly fast. You are an unimposing, fleshy creature. For a brief moment in history, the animals are naive. They look at you with curiosity, not fear. This phenomenon is called ecological naivete. It happens when prey animals have never encountered a specific predator, and therefore lack the evolutionary programming to flee. But you are not a normal predator. You have something no other animal has. You have the ability to project force from a distance. At an archaeological site in Schoningen, Germany, scientists unearthed something that changed the history of the world. Hidden in the mud were wooden spears, perfectly balanced, carved with immense skill. These are the Schoningen spears, dating back roughly 300,000 years. They are not just sticks. They are precision weapons designed to be thrown with lethal accuracy. The megafauna did not understand the spear. A mammoth understands teeth. A cave bear understands claws. They understand a predator that must grapple with them, a predator they can crush with their sheer mass. But you do not grapple. You stand 40 feet away. You flick your arm. And suddenly, a sharp piece of wood and stone is buried deep in the animal's lungs. This was a biological cheat code. You broke the rules of engagement. You killed without touching. Over the next few tens of thousands of years, the world experiences a wave of extinctions. Across Europe, Asia, Australia, and the Americas, the giant beasts disappear. As human populations spread across the globe, the megafauna collapse. It is a mass slaughter. The animals that survived were the ones that learned a very specific, very urgent lesson. They learned that the small, hairless, upright ape is the harbinger of death. They learned that if you see the ape, you do not wait. You do not investigate. You run. This terror was burned into the evolutionary memory of the survivors. The animals alive today are the descendants of the paranoid. They are the offspring of the ones that flinched at the snap of a twig and bolted at the smell of sweat. But it is not just your weapons that make you a monster in the eyes of the wild. It is your methodology. Dr. Chris Derrimont, a conservation scientist at the University of Victoria, published a massive study on human hunting behavior. He analyzed data from across the globe and concluded that humans are a super predator. But the title is not just about the volume of animals you kill. It is about which animals you kill. In the natural world, a lion or a wolf targets the weak. They look for the sick, the very young, or the very old. It is basic energy economics. You do not risk injury fighting the strongest buck in the herd when there is a limping fawn nearby. Natural predators skim the vulnerable from the population. But you do the exact opposite. You target the strong. Human hunters, both historically and today, seek out the largest, the strongest, and the most mature animals. You want the buck with the biggest antlers. You want the largest fish in the ocean. You take the reproductive adults in their prime. By targeting the prime adults, you inflict massive, cascading trauma on animal populations. You destroy their social structures. You remove the elders who hold the ecological knowledge of where to find water and how to migrate. You do not just thin the herd, you decapitate it. The animal kingdom has no defense against this. For millions of years, evolution taught animals that reaching adulthood and growing large was the ultimate protection against predation. A fully grown elephant had nothing to fear. A massive silverback gorilla was safe. But you inverted the rules. You made their size and their strength the very reasons they die. You turned their evolutionary adaptations into liabilities. This is why the fear runs so deep. You are a predator that defies logic. You strike from afar. You target the untouchable, and you do it systematically. So, how does this ancestral trauma manifest today? How do the horror stories play out in the modern wild? It changes the very landscape of the earth. When animals are terrified, they change their habits. If they know humans are active during the day, the animals become strictly nocturnal. Across the globe, from the coyotes in North America to the tigers in Nepal, mammals are shifting their activities into the dark of night simply to avoid you. You are forcing a global shift in circadian rhythms. They also change where they eat. Deer will avoid fertile, lush valleys if they smell human activity nearby, choosing instead to starve slowly on barren, rocky ridges where they feel safe. This means the plants in the valley grow unchecked, while the plants on the ridge are overgrazed. Your mere presence, the invisible aura of terror you project, literally dictates where forests grow and where soil erodes. You do not even have to fire a weapon or set a trap. Your smell on the wind is enough to alter the geography of a continent. But the most counterintuitive twist of all is that agriculture, the very thing that civilized you, made you even more terrifying to the wild. You think of agriculture as a peaceful endeavor, growing wheat, raising cattle, building fences. But to the wild animals, agriculture was the moment you declared total war. When your ancestors were hunter-gatherers, they moved with the seasons. They were deadly, yes, but they were transient. They took what they needed and moved on. The forest could recover. But when you invented farming, you stopped moving. You drew a line in the dirt and said, "This land is mine." You cleared the forests. You killed anything that tried to eat your crops. You slaughtered anything that threatened your livestock. You stopped being a predator that hunted for food, and you became an eradicator that killed for territory. You built walls. You lit massive fires. You domesticated the wolves and turned them against their wild cousins. Agriculture was not a peaceful retreat from the wild. It was the construction of heavily fortified exclusionary zones. To the animals looking in from the dark, your settlements were death camps. The campfire, which brought your ancestors warmth, safety, and community, was the blazing eye of the beast to everything else. This is the legacy you carry within you. You are the inheritor of a 300,000-year-old reputation. Think about this the next time you step outside. You walk through a modern city park. You are holding a cup of coffee. You are wearing soft, comfortable clothes. You are thinking about your weekend plans. You feel completely detached from the brutal reality of the food chain. You consider yourself a gentle, civilized creature. You see a flock of pigeons pecking at the concrete. You take a step toward them. Instantly they scatter. The air fills with the frantic beating of wings. A squirrel darts up an oak tree, its heart hammering against its ribs, its eyes wide with panic. A deer on the edge of the woods freezes, its muscles coiled like springs, ready to flee for its life. You smile. You think it is a cute moment of nature interacting with the urban environment. You think they are just nervous little creatures. But they are not reacting to a person holding a coffee cup. They are looking at the shape. They see the upright posture. They see the binocular vision. They recognize the slow, deliberate, bipedal gait of the persistence hunter. Their DNA is screaming at them. The stories passed down through countless generations of slaughter and survival are echoing in their tiny, panicked brains. They do not see a modern human on a leisurely stroll. They see the apex. They see the anomaly. They see the thing that throws the lightning and commands the fire. You walk into the woods. The trees are still. A bird stops singing. You step on a dry branch. A deer bolts into the brush. Why did it run? Because to them, you are the monster in the dark.